calls. The first call I want to get to, I want to talk to Adam in North Carolina, who wants to know about his Gnostic atheist friend. Adam, what's going on?
Hey, thanks, Dan. I think it was Justin, was it? Or Empathetic Atheist?
Yes, it's both. It goes by both.
There we go. Well, first off, I just want to say whatever anyone wants to give themselves as a label, whether it be agnostic, atheist, I thought it was very interesting that was brought up, because my position is that such a label is incoherent. Now, if someone says they are that, I'm going to address them as that and say that is their position. But then my view on it, just a personal view, is I don't think it makes logical sense. And I'll put my argument out there if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Okay. So I remember you saying a while back, because great show, Truth Wanted, awesome stuff. I also heard the modern day debate plug earlier, so awesome show too. But I heard you say on a previous show that you have a friend who is a Gnostic atheist. Is that correct?
Is that for me?
Yeah, who is that for? Is that me or...
I remember Objectively Dan saying that he is a Gnostic atheist friend. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
I've known at least one or two people who have called themselves Gnostic atheists. Yeah.
And so I kind of want to go into the definition of what a Gnostic atheist would be, because I think that's where, if there is such thing as a Gnostic atheist and there is such thing as a Gnostic theist, I think that creates an impossibility, because if we say the position of Gnostic would mean someone actually knows there is a God and the other person knows there is not a God, then if knowledge is justified true belief, well, that means this person knows that God does exist, and that's true. And this person knows that God does not exist, and that's also true. So I can't reconcile that. So that almost makes Gnostic theist and Gnostic atheist impossible in my book.
Well, I agree. Like, obviously, both of those things can't exist with the definition of, yeah, this is a justified belief and is also true. But we do live in a world where people believe things that are not true. So, like, I think we can still use that label as a description for people's beliefs rather than a description of the belief itself actually being true or not, if that makes sense. The word is less of a descriptor of the truthiness of the word and more so as a description of what that person believes is true, if that makes sense.
I feel like it's more subjective than an objective term. When you're speaking about that, it's more of the person. They believe that they have justified true belief. In my personal opinion, I'm not sure how they can have that. I have just as many conversations with Gnostic atheists or anti-theists, however they want to label themselves. I have just as many conversations with them about what their positive claim for them knowing that there are no gods, just as much as I do a Gnostic theist saying that they know for a fact that there are gods.
Yeah.
You see, in my thank you for the discussion on this. And once again, I'm not going to be like, you're not this. I'm totally fine. This is a pedantic conversation. But I believe everyone has a burden of proof. As a agnostic myself, my burden of proof is to show that we cannot evaluate the proposition of God or gods. I believe a person who holds the position that they do not have belief in God is an atheist. Like, if I were to look into your mind, which I can't do, and if I could see that you don't believe in God, I would call you an atheist. If someone does believe in God, I would call you a theist. And if someone is unable to come to a belief position as though they actually evaluate the proposition itself and say, I can't evaluate the proposition, to come to belief or not belief in the proposition. Because you either believe the proposition of God or you do not believe the proposition of God. There's just a dichotomy in that. So that's how I kind of make this trichotomy. It's kind of a third position absent of atheist and theist. And that's how I use the terms, and it's personal to me, I guess. Thoughts?
Yeah, there is what is the label? There is a specific is it mistheist? There is another, there's a label for it that describes, you know what I'm talking about here, Justin, the idea that like TMM on YouTube uses this term for himself. It's the idea that the God claim itself can't even be evaluated. Like, it's not even a proper question to ask ourselves. So I if somebody can tell me that word, that'd be great. But
there is no.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but there is a label for it. As to my thoughts on what you're saying. I think, yeah, there's going to be different kinds of God claims, and so I would just say that all the God claims I have encountered that are meaningful, right? Not just to say, oh, God is just the universe. Well, yeah, I believe the universe exists, but like I don't call that God. I just mean the very specific God claims that say, yes, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, or Allah, or these specific kind of gods and the ideas that encompass them. I lack a belief in. I do not find them to be true in their claims. So yeah, I just making that distinction that a God belief can mean a couple different things, not just the Christian God in particular.
I do have a question, Adam.
Go ahead.
So it struck me interesting when you said that you, as an agnostic, have a positive claim to show that the claims cannot be evaluated. How did you get to the conclusion that we can't evaluate the claims? Could it be possible that we don't know how to evaluate them yet? Basically saying that we didn't know Pluto existed until we saw that it existed, but obviously it existed before we knew that it existed. So why do you think you would have a positive claim to prove that we can't evaluate the claims just as of right now?
I think, and good catch, and I want to reevaluate what I said. I would say that we do not have the ability at the present moment to evaluate the claims because we have logic, reason, and the scientific method. And as far as I know, none of those can branch into the realm of supernatural, of which many of these God propositions entail. So I don't see of a way for us to formulate knowledge on these claims. And that's how I justify my position of I cannot evaluate. So someone can say to me, I have special revelation from God. And of course, that's just personal to them. So sure, you can believe, but I do not have access to this. So that's why I say I do not have access to any sort of information to evaluate these claims.
I think I understand that. I think I understand that a little bit better now. So when you say that we can't, that your claim is to provide proof or evidence that we haven't been able to currently find a way to evaluate these claims of a God. All you would need is to look at all of the claims that, for example, thunder. We used to think that lightning and thunder was Zeus and Thor pissed off at us. And, every single claim that has been supernatural that we've found an answer for, it has come to the conclusion that it has not been, it's always been a natural answer that whenever we've come to a conclusion. So, I mean, there's your evidence right there to back up your claim as an agnostic without having any more burden of proof upon that.
And I would say that kind of makes me a local atheist to maybe some gods. Like, I personally hold disbelief in some gods. I'm more of a global agnostic. And I would also say, I don't know if it would be like a scientism of the gaps to say, it does make logical sense that we've been kind of narrowing the field of what God is in control of. Does that mean that God is not in control of anything? Well, I don't really have any way to, prove. So I would say, it does make logical sense, but I can't say I hold certainty in the statement that God does not exist or God does exist. I can't really evaluate it.
Well, you make a good point, Adam, because we have to be able to define what God is and what he's capable of and what he's doing in order for us to make predictions about it, in order to recognize it as a force. If we are using like an example of, like a spirit or something, what does it mean for the human spirit? Is it our consciousness? Is it our whatever? That's a really, we don't have any predictive power with a definition like that. We have to be able to kind of make more specific claims about it in order for us to really evaluate it. So I agree with you there. I was doing a bit of Googling while y'all were talking. Misotheist, which was the word I was saying earlier, kind of saying is the hatred of God. What I was thinking of was apotheism. And apotheism is the attitude that whether God exists or not doesn't really matter. Like, it's not even a claim about belief in particular. It's just a kind of a statement of Like, I don't care. Like, this doesn't matter to me. So that's the
That's
word.
most of the community that I hang out with is apatheists.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say there's probably a large portion of the world that is apatheist, and they just don't know that's a thing that they can call themselves. So
They just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, I'd say a big part of Austin is probably apatheist. So there we go.
Can I ask you guys one last big question? I'll let you get on to some other calls.
Ask us one last big question, Adam.
You got it. And then I just want to say the meteor storm was totally the beginning of Armageddon. That's a joke. But anyways.
It's always been the beginning of Armageddon, and it's not going to stop. I don't know what the meteor strike. I think there's a lot of other things we could point to. But anyway, continue.
So with that, let's say we have two people. Person A says, I believe God exists. So let's say they're a strong theist. That's how I would kind of call them. We can just say they're theists, whatever. And then person B says, I don't believe your claim. So I'm a person C. I say, I can't evaluate your claim. But person B says, I don't believe your claim. Person A, I would say, definitely has a burden of proof. This is my position. And person B saying, I don't believe your claim, I say also has a burden of proof to show why they don't believe it. And there might be good reasons, but I think both people claiming that a God exists and someone claiming that God does not exist, both have a burden of proof. Your thoughts on that statement?
Can I take this one?
Yeah, go for it, Justin.
Okay, so and this is a very common thing that I hear a lot, is when somebody says, I don't believe your claim, that does not necessarily mean that they believe the opposite of X. Just because I don't believe, let's just say you were a theist and you said, I believe that a God exists. When I say, cool, where's your evidence? I am not saying I believe that you are wrong. I am simply sitting in what's called a default position that I'm not going to say it is or it isn't. And this is in my opinion, used quite a bit, but it works for me. It works a lot. Have you ever heard, Adam, have you ever heard of the gumball analogy?
Of course, yes.
So for example, like we have a jar of gumballs. Neither one of us knows how many gumballs are actually in there. And I come into the room and I point at it and I say, Adam, this jar of gumballs has an odd number of gumballs in it. And would you believe me at that point?
I would not.
With you not believing me and not taking my claim as truth, does that mean that you think there's an odd number in there?
It does not.
Which means that you do not have a burden of proof to prove that is either even or odd. So you're sitting back and waiting for evidence to come to the table. So in my personal opinion, I do not think that, you as somebody who just has a lack of conviction for the claims that are being made has the burden of proof.
And I just want to throw that back at you a little bit here. I would say when I do not believe you, like if we walked into a random room at, let's say, a friend's place, we're buddies now, and you see a jar of gumballs, and first time we hang out at this dude's place, and you say, there's even gumballs in that, and I say, I don't believe you because there's no way you have access to this knowledge. Now, that wouldn't mean that I believe they're odd. It would mean that I don't think you have the justification to make a knowledge claim. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I have no justified reason to accept your claim. And then to me, I feel like this is just my feelings on this, but it feels like a lot of atheists are claiming that Christians are wrong, where I feel like I try to claim there's no reason to believe their claims or believe not their claims.
Well, I think the word that we want to look for when we're talking about the choosing not to believe or disbelieve, it's kind of the null hypothesis, right? We're accepting the null hypothesis. We're not going one way or the other. Just some terminology.
Well, we don't accept the null. We only reject or fail to reject the null.
Yes. And that's a great distinction to make too as well. I think what I would say to that, Adam, is Christians do make particular claims about God and about what God is and what he can do, that some are demonstrably false. I think that's something that we can kind of look at and examine. Now, of course, the more kind of loose you are with your God belief, the more kind of loose the God is. and it's kind of it gets into that territory where we can't really evaluate it too much. And with that much, I can agree with you. But there's definitely some more hardcore fundamentalist types in particular who would make like really specific claims that we can actually look at with data and stuff and see. Like, for example, people saying that prayer works with healing and stuff like that. Like, they've done studies on that. Like, it doesn't do anything. If anything, it makes it worse because people feel like they have to perform and you know, under these conditions and stuff like that. So it just kind of depends on the claim. I
think that was the Templeton Foundation that did that.
That is the Templeton Foundation, which was a religious organization. So kind of interesting. But anyway, Adam, you asked some, yeah. Thanks so much for calling. You asked some great questions. So glad we got you at the top of the hour. And I feel like Justin was the perfect person for you to talk to with this stuff. So I'm glad we got to make that connection. Looking forward to hearing from you again. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great evening.
You too.
Yeah. Awesome. What a great start. You know, when I'll be honest, Adam was obviously super eloquent, and I'm really glad we got to talk to him about it. Whenever I hear people want to talk about the definition of atheism stuff, there's a little bit inside of me that dies a little bit because it's like, you know what I mean? It's like it's a topic that's been kind of done to death, but it is important. It is really important that we figure out what we mean when we say this stuff, because 90% of the time when I tell people I'm an atheist, they don't know what I mean when I say that. Or that I'm the same as you. I like to use agnostic atheist, despite, you know, pushback with that and stuff. But I just feel like it makes things more clear to kind of the layman, I guess, who doesn't, you know, have a super in-depth understanding of these words. Because even then, it obviously gets confusing and there's controversy.
Well, with how I do what I do and in the way that I do it, this is sometimes the first conversation. And when I say the first conversation is that you cannot expect, if your agenda is to respectfully try and deconvert people and bring them to what you would call reason, it's not going to happen in the first conversation. It may not happen in the first 100 conversations. Normally, what is an atheist is kind of where, you know, we start to get into the meat and potatoes of things. It's the first conversation that I have with somebody just to show them where I'm at, just to show that I'm not a barbarian completely trying to demolish their beliefs with a sword. You know, I am simply here just trying to figure out what they understand. And my position as an agnostic atheist is saying that I'm not right off the bat saying that your claims are wrong and that you are false. I'm simply saying that I'm not convinced of what you're convinced. What do you got for me?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I think when Anthony Magnabosco talked to me on camera a couple of years back, I think I used a definition of atheism that was like a belief in science or something. I don't know. It was very strange. Not what I would use today. Really glad I'm not at that place anymore. But people change. And you're right. It doesn't happen right away. It has to be through a couple of different conversations.